Nebo versus Ventus.
There's a new one. All right, guys, welcome to the live stream today. I'm Derek. I am the marketing director at Outdoor Vitals. This is Tyler.
Our product designer. No, just kidding. I'm over operations. Tayson and Brigham are traveling abroad, visiting some of our partners, and so we're really excited to be able to talk about the Nebo Windbreaker today.
Yeah, so this has been something that we have been incredibly excited about for quite a while now. It's been a while in the making. I've personally been using it probably about a year or so, maybe a little less. And I know Brigham and Tayson have been using those even longer as we've been developing the Nebo. So while we're waiting for more people to jump on here, we know a lot of people are on their way, just getting the links to join us. We're going to go give a brief overview of the Nebo and a couple stories from our use, and then we're going to go straight to answering your questions. So if you've already got a question, go ahead and enter it into the chat. We'll go through and we'll answer your questions as best we can. But like I said, the Nebo is something we've been working on for a while. I've personally used it on multiple overnight backpacking trips. I've used it daily for running, a whole lot of different things, and I've been thoroughly impressed. So on one of the trips that I was on, it was fairly cold. Tyler was on this one as well, and he remembers it being a lot colder than I do. But either way, on this trip, I wore the Nebo all day long. We were hiking, so the entire hike in, I had the Nebo on over just an altitude base layer. So the altitude sun hoodie and then the Nebo. And this was in October, and temperatures were kind of dropping as we got later in the day. But I stayed totally warm. A lot of the cold air was just kind of from a light breeze that was going on. And with the amount of exertion that we were putting out, throwing on a Ventus or any amount of insulation was a little bit overkill. It would have me overheating. But when I just had the altitude and the Nebo on, I never overheated and I wasn't cold at all. It was about the perfect temperature while we were moving. When we stopped and got to camp, that's when I started throwing on some other insulation. Temperatures did drop well below freezing that night, but the entire time we were hiking, the Nebo was really all I wanted over that altitude. So really impressive.
Question for you on that one, Derek. Tayson says that the Nebo Windbreaker is the perfect be bold, start cold morning starter jacket. I know that morning when we got up, it was low 20s. Did you start with just the Nebo that morning?
On that morning, no.
Okay.
I did start with some insulation as well. When it's in the 20s,
it's a little cold.
It's a little cold for just hiking. I guess it depends on how hot your body runs. For me, it's a little cold. But when I'm doing something like running, and that's where I said I use it almost every day when I'm doing running and training for our 100-mile challenge. When it's 20 degrees, the Nebo is all I want, again, over something just like the altitude. So it depends on your exertion, and it depends on the temperature and how hot or cold your body runs. But that morning I didn't use just the Nebo until it warmed up a little bit. I wore, I think, the Ventus over an altitude for the first 30 minutes to an hour, and then I did stop and change the Ventus for the Nebo. But while I'm running, that's all I want is the Nebo. It's too much exertion for any kind of insulation, even at 20 degree weather.
Yeah, and on a lot of our monthly trips like that one, our pace is a lot more stop and go than a normal trip because we're trying to film and get other content pieces and stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're seeing a few more people join here. So welcome to a lot of you guys that are just getting on. We're seeing Terry welcoming us to his living room. Thanks, Terry. I'm sure it's comfy. I hope I'm on the couch. Welcome Paul and Michael and Jonathan and a few others here. So looks like we're getting a good number of people to join us today. So like I said, if you weren't here when I said before, we're just going to do a quick overview of the Nebo. And if you already have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. In just a few minutes, we're just going to dive right into questions and answer as many as we can. So the Nebo is 4 ounces. It's polyester. and it's as minimal as we could make it. Basically, we wanted it to be super light. We wanted it to block the wind, obviously, but be breathable. And that's one of the most impressive parts about the Nebo Windbreaker, is that it is wind blocking but breathable. A lot of windbreakers out there, not all of them, but a lot of them will feel like a plastic bag that you're kind of wearing, and that's just kind of a terrible, clammy feeling that nobody really enjoys. The Nebo does not feel like that. It's really quite an impressive piece with the amount of breathability that's built into the fabric. So, Tyler, I know you've had that for a couple of weeks now. What's been some of your favorite things about testing out the Nebo as we've gotten ready for launch?
Yeah, I think it's just very surprising that for the weight and how light the jacket feels, how good it does take the edge off of the wind. Like most places in the West, at least that I know of, we're having a record winter here in southern Utah. We've been having tons of snow, and even today we've been having snow flurries outside and tons of sleet and things like that yesterday. So it's been a really cold March, and I like it a lot for just being able to take a little bit of the edge off, and especially for those more active activities. It's definitely not designed to be warm when you're static and just sitting around, but if you're doing anything where you're exerting at all, it's going to keep a lot of that heat and do what Brigham talks about constantly, is the ways that you lose heat, which would be your conductive and convective heat loss. And this jacket is great for stopping that convective heat loss from the wind. So I've really liked that. It's just kind of I don't know. I think when you pair it with our other pieces, was one of the biggest missing pieces to the puzzle for the layering system for us. And I've used it right over the top of base layer or t-shirt. I've been using it a lot just today over the top of my Vario because it's quite a cold day. So yeah, so speaking of that, I think the number one reason, and it's the most underrated reason that people feel cold, especially out on the trail, is actually from that convective heat loss that you mentioned. Wind chill is probably the number one most underrated cause for making us feel cold that there is. A lot of times temperature, I mean, it does play a big role, but especially when we're being active and hiking, convective heat loss is one of the things that we just don't think about as much, when really it's the main problem. And so the Nebo was built to solve that issue. So Tyler mentioned it, really taking care of that convective heat loss. We do want to reiterate that the Nebo is built specifically for active use. It's not built to keep you cold. Let me rephrase that. It's not built necessarily to maintain your body temperature when you're being stagnant, because it's not insulation at all. There's no insulation whatsoever in the Nebo. It's really meant just to block the wind. And while you're being active, it will allow you to breathe at the same time. So it is an active piece. Totally different and specific application than some of our other layers. So like Tyler mentioned, it's just filling a gap that we don't currently have. Nothing else in our current layering system before the Nebo really could fill the role that the Nebo does, and vice versa. All right, well, let's dive into some of the questions we've got coming in here. So we're gonna start at the top and see if we can work down through some of these. So Nathaniel wanted us to talk about the special material and fabrication process in Japan, and also what convinced us that this fabricator is superb. So many of you have heard of some of our partners like Toray. We work with Toray on a lot of different fabrics, on a lot of different pieces of gear, and they're one of the best fabric suppliers that are in the world. And Toray has developed this fabric that we've used in the Nebo that finds the right balance. Breathability happens in a fabric, especially a polyester synthetic fabric, based on the tightness of the weave of the fibers in the fabric. So
if you have a loose weave, it's going to let more air to pass through. It's going to be more breathable, and a tighter weave makes it more windproof. And so we've combined an optimized weave with some proprietary coatings to really make the Nebo fabric that breathes while still blocking the wind. So with Toray, going back to your question, Nathaniel, about Japan, they have multiple fabric mills in different places. And in Japan, one of their fabric mills has gotten really good at making this fabric. They've tried to replicate it in other mills and so far have been unable to do so. And so it's really quite a unique fabric. It's really impressive what it can do, but it's something that so far, even though there are multiple mills owned by Toray, they can only create it. They can only make this fabric right in Japan right now.
Yeah, and as far as speaking to Toray and speaking to what options are available to us for high-end technical fabrics, Toray is one of the leaders in innovation in the world for technical fabric development, and really they're every bit as technologically advanced as some of the other top ones out there like Gore and Schuler. And so we're super excited to be able to use this fabric, as it is quite an expensive fabric, and you won't see it on a ton of different products for that reason, but it brings us that exact blend of the ability to cut the wind from the outside and allow it to breathe from the inside. So
absolutely. So hopefully that answers your question, Nathaniel. Sean says, I own several of your jackets. Would it be possible for Ovi to start putting a center zip pull cords on the center zip so that it's easier to operate with gloves on? Thanks, love your gear. Well, one of the biggest reasons that we don't put cords on a lot of our zippers is because when we're designing the product, we're going for simplicity and a really ultralight weight. Now, does that mean that you can't add this later? No, absolutely not. We actually expect a lot of ultralight backpackers to kind of mod out their gear a little bit, and that's something you can do on any of our zippers. Even on the Ventus, the Vario, you can loop a really lightweight cord through there to create a pull, but for keeping the weights down and even some of the costs down on what we're able to offer to you, we choose not to include that on a lot of our pieces.
Yeah, as far as this one goes, if you hopped on Amazon or some of these DIY websites for making your own gear, you could grab some 16th inch cord or shock cord and do your own pull tabs, and not only does that make it function the way that you want, but also it helps you to keep your gear separate from friends and family, as now you've got your own color and option on there. So
great question. Ryan said, my biggest question is the wind jacket versus rain jacket. And this is one that we've heard actually quite a lot since we've launched the Nebo on Monday. So we'll probably spend a little bit of time on this one. So a lot of you are familiar with the Tusher rain jacket that we launched last year. It's a really lightweight 7-ounce rain jacket. And as far as rain jackets goes, it's very breathable and durable, so that you could wear it for longer periods of time in rainstorms. And so a lot of the people have asked us, well, if the Tusher rain jacket blocks rain and it's going to block air as well, couldn't I just use the rain jacket as a windbreaker? And I think Tyler, he put it well earlier, so I'm gonna let you kind of explain that one a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so I think there's different levels of looking at this, and the first level is if just this is like on the surface level, if you can only afford one jacket, then a rain jacket is a great choice, because it will definitely block the wind, it will block rain, and it can work in a pinch as a windbreaker, but you've got to know you're going to be creating a lot of moisture on your body if you're hiking and moving in a rain jacket. The main advantage of the windbreaker is it cuts the wind, stops the wind chill, but it also allows your body to vent and not build up so much moisture on the inside. So that's where the Nebo really fits and works, is when you go from being stagnant to being really active. It is a superior windbreaker in that point, at that point.
Something that is important to remember about rain jackets, even when we say, the Tusher rain jacket is breathable, which is true, that rain jacket breathability is different from active layer breathability. So in a rain jacket, just because it's breathable does not mean air permeable. Like if you held the rain jacket up to your mouth and tried to blow, you would not get air through the Tusher rain jacket fabrics. But it will allow some of the vapors that your body is creating to go through and help it be more comfortable as far as rain jackets go. Tyler mentioned a really important part of this, though, that if you're being active and your body is creating more moisture, you're exerting yourself at all, a rain jacket can cause more problems for you on the trail than good in some scenarios. If all of your layers become soaked from the inside, you'll eventually get cold, not from wind chill now, because if you're using that rain jacket as a windbreaker, but you're just sweating a ton, you're gonna get cold later because now all of those wet layers are sucking moisture or sucking heat out from your body. Water and moisture, sweat, it just sucks heat from your body in order to try to dry, and it's more of a convective cold, or a conductive cold, excuse me.
Yeah. So if you want to dig in a little further to see what fits for you, we have some charts on our website. We call these our relative, is that the word? Relative product guides?
Relative performance graphics.
Okay.
So this is something that we've had some of our team members create for you. You might have noticed them already on a lot of our different apparel products specifically. They're basically charts that you can use to compare one piece of performance apparel to another, and there's ratings on it. We've just thrown up on the screen that show breathability, durability, warmth, etc. on a 5-bar rating system. And so the one that's on the screen currently is for the Nebo. For the Tusher. We'll put the Tusher up first.
There's the Tusher.
We've got Joe that's been switching it on me here, so I think we're all on the same page here. So we're going to put the Tusher up, the rain jacket. The Tusher rain jacket, you can kind of see that some of its breathability and durability ratings are not going to be this, like they're not going to be the same as what you can see on the Nebo. The breathability is still quite low because it is a rain jacket. It's not meant for active use. Durability is 2 bars. It's better than a lot of other ultralight rain jackets. Warmth is low. A rain jacket doesn't have any kind of insulation. But essentially, you can go through these relative performance graphics on all of our different products on the website, and you'll be able to compare and contrast these different ratings between different pieces. And so even throwing up, Joe, I don't know, is it possible to throw both of these graphics up at the same time?
Not quickly.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll just interject one thing here. Your initial question, this was Ryan's question, right?
Yeah.
So, Ryan, your initial question is rain jacket versus wind jacket. And to be frank, our answer is both. The Nebo weighs 4 ounces. The Tusher weighs 7. You take both of those on every trip with you, and the combined 11.5 ounces that you're going to have is going to be lighter than a lot of fleeces and long sleeve shirts and things like that you would probably be tempted to pack anyways. And so our initial desire to design these together was to make them work together as two interconnected working parts of your layering system. And so that's what we're designing, is the optimal layering system. If you can, I know a lot of people they love the weight of the tusher, myself included. I have my tusher in my Coda UL backpack that's like my everyday backpack, and I just take it everywhere I go, except for a photo shoot that we went to Zion last week when it was very rainy and I was very unhappy with myself. But the idea is they're both light enough weight and they both do different enough things that we would encourage everyone to take both if you can.
Absolutely. You're overall going to be a lot more happy, a lot more comfortable on the trail if you can take both and use them in the right scenarios that they were designed for. There's no substitute for a windbreaker when it comes to just blocking wind and being able to breathe. And equally in rain, there's no substitute for a rain jacket when you want to stay dry. And that's another question that people have had when it comes to rain jacket versus windbreaker. And they've asked, is the Nebo waterproof? Absolutely not. Do not try to use the Nebo as a rain jacket. It is going to let water through. It does have a DWR coating for really light spills or a little bit of a drizzle for just a second. Water can beat up, but DWR coatings or treatments do wear away, and the Nebo windbreaker is not inherently waterproof. And so again, they're built for two completely different use cases, one to block the wind and one to block moisture. And the one that blocks the wind is built also to breathe and use during active use. So really we recommend getting both. And like Tyler said, they're so light, they're so compact and compressible that you're going to be able to stash them almost anywhere in your pack, and they're not really going to weigh too much.
That leads us to one other question. If you want to grab one, we can show how tight it folds up. And while Derek's folding one up, I would say that the debates that will come up and make more sense as far as which jacket versus which jacket inside of our layering system is, should I take the Vario or the Ventus? Or should I take the Nova UL or the Nova Pro? Those two sets of jackets have much more overlap in their usability than the rain jacket versus the windbreaker.
Yeah, so as you can kind of see, you can basically fit the Nebo in one fist, and I'm not really squeezing too hard, so you could, if you really wanted to compress it somewhere, you could. We don't really have it in a stuff sack or anything like that, where this is so light at 4 ounces and just so malleable. Probably the best way to pack the Nebo is stashing it in the cracks. So if you've got all of your other gear already in there, you can shove this almost anywhere and it'll fill whatever gap you have. Versus if you do what I just did and try to ball it up or pack it up, it's actually going to take up more space even like this than if you were just to loosely shove it in a smaller little crack. It'll just fit in a lot of different places with how lightweight that fabric is. So we recommend doing that, and you can stow it really in any crack or pocket that you got in your pack.
Yep, I think you could fit it in a cargo pocket on your pants or in your hip belt pocket on your pack very easily, which is kind of the purpose of it. Like, really, this jacket is meant to be the most versatile layering piece that we have in the system. You can wear it as a mid layer, just directly over your base layer. You can layer it under a Ventus or a Vario. You can layer it over the outside of a Ventus or a Vario. It just depends on what you foresee your next few hours looking like and how you foresee needing to change layers based on how much you're going to be exerting, what the weather and terrain looks like that you're going to be hiking on, and how often you're going to be stopping, because those are all different elements that affect how you layer for the day. And so this can do it all.
Yeah, so while we're actually mentioning layering, I did see a question in here asking if it fits well over other layers, and the answer is yes. It's going to fit very similarly to the Vario jacket. or even somewhat similar to the Tusher rain jacket if you already have one of those for reference. It's built to go over a mid layer and base layers easily. I wouldn't necessarily think that it's going to fit very well over something thicker like the Nova Pro. The Nova Pro is absolutely an outer layer, and the Nebo probably won't fit over that very well. But yeah, it'll definitely fit over mid layers, base layers, and a couple of things like that if you've got multiple layers on. Now, we've also mentioned a lot that the Nebo can be used as a part of any layering system any time of year. And that's still true, even if you're going to be in temperatures where you're going to want something thicker like the Nova Pro. Matter of fact, we just went on a cross-country ski trip about a month ago, and things got well below freezing. I think it was actually -2 degrees at one point.
When we left the truck, it was around 11 or like 15 or 16 degrees, I think.
And that was when the sun was still up.
Yeah.
So at night, as the sun went down, it dropped below zero, and the Nebo was a part of my layering system for that. The Nebo, as a windbreaker, it can still stop airflow, which will still help you retain more warmth. And so during the winter, really cold scenarios, you can still wear the Nebo underneath something like the Nova Pro, and it'll add an additional level of warmth. Not because of insulation, but because it is slowing down airflow, which that airflow is going to be part of what makes you feel cold. So to sum that up, in colder weather, wear underneath something thicker like the Nova Pro. In warmer to shoulder season weather, you can fit the Nebo over a mid layer or over your base layer, and it's going to keep you fairly comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some questions about how does it hold up to friction from shoulder straps and hip belt buckles. This fabric is very similar to the Ventus and Vario fabric, and so it will hold up to friction and use on the trail in the same way that those have, which we've found to be very durable. We've been very happy with how they've done, and for me, working on the customer service and warehousing side of the business, we see very, very, very little issues with durability in the Vario and the Ventus. Our overall return rate for the entire company is less than 3%. That's just for returns. Our actual warranty percentage is more like 0.1%. So yeah, we're feeling like this will do what you expect out of those other two pillar pieces of our layering system.
So Sean, you had another question actually about the coating or the fabric itself of the Nebo. You asked that, well, you said Brigham had mentioned a coating for wind blocking. Does that wear off? If so, can it be reapplied? The answer is no. It shouldn't wear off, and you should never have to reapply it. Basically, what makes the windbreaker breathable yet blocking of the wind is kind of built into the fabric itself. It's kind of baked into there, for lack of better words. And so you shouldn't have to worry about reapplying anything to this. Really, the only thing that will wear off is the DWR aspect eventually, where water won't beat up as much and roll off. It'll just soak through. But the Nebo windbreaker was never designed to be waterproof. The DWR treatment is just kind of a nice perk for a while, and you can reapply a DWR treatment. But as far as being able to block the wind while remaining breathable, you shouldn't have to change anything or reapply anything.
Mm-hmm. So we have an interesting question from Michael here, asking, would you expect the Nebo to be any less breathable with the turn? And that's kind of a hard comparison. The turn is a knit fabric. The Nebo is a woven fabric. So the turn is definitely going to be more porous and breathable than the Nebo, but it's also a little heavier and thicker. So
I think I saw this question coming in when we were talking about layering it over the altitude. So I kind of think that the question might be compared to a base layer like the altitude. If your base layer is something like the turn, is it still going to be as breathable?
Okay. So in that instance, if you have the Tern and you're pairing it with the Nebo, you're going to notice a substantial break in the wind. You'll notice that it will work well. It will be a little warmer than if you had it with just the altitude. But there again, the way that you choose to layer should be based on the exact circumstances that you're going into. With our layering system, with any layering system, the idea is not that you take every single thing with you every time. The idea is that you have all of the tools in the toolbox that you could need, and you pick the ones that you need for that exact circumstance. So I think the Tern and the Nebo would be fantastic spring and fall combo for a base layer and a mid layer. For me, sometimes the Tern is a little hot in the summer, so I go with the altitude. I actually go with the altitude more often than the Tern, even in the spring and summer, just because it's that much lighter and breathable, and I'm always going fast and hard, but it just depends on what you're liking. So
Absolutely. And I just realized that we failed to announce something at the beginning of this live stream that we should have. In an email that went out this morning, we promised that during this live stream, we will be announcing a secret that we have not really shared before. So we'll do that at the end of the live stream before we wrap up. We're going to continue answering questions for a few more minutes before we get there, but stay to the end and make sure you hear what that secret is.
Okay, next question I see. What wind mileage can this withstand? This is an interesting question. We haven't tested the Nebo like in a wind tunnel or something where you actually know exactly what the different mileage of wind speeds is. And the reason that we haven't worried about going that technical is because we wanted to make a very breathable wind jacket. And this is always going to be a little bit of an oxymoron, at least as far as like how it sounds, because breathable windbreaker sounds like it's not going to break the wind. But in reality, the way that it works is it just provides a barrier between you and the wind, and therefore allows your body to keep its own heat better. So you will notice for sure that if you get into high winds, like 30 and 40 mile an hour winds, you may want to go into a warmer piece because that's an extreme wind, but the idea is that it helps your body keep its own heat, not necessarily just stopping the wind from getting to your skin.
Maybe a couple examples will help explain that as well. So, for example, if you're out there enjoying a nice 60 or 70 degree weather day, it's a pretty nice day, but there's a little bit of a chilly breeze going on. If all you put on is the Nebo Windbreaker, you're going to be able to enjoy that day as if there wasn't a chilly breeze. Now, if you're in something like where like Tyler explained, there's some really strong gusty winds blowing, and you put the Nebo Windbreaker on over just the base layer, it's going to really help block a lot of that airflow, but you're going to be able to breathe enough to not have that clammy feeling. That being said, if the actual temperature of the air is low, you're going to want to add insulation as well, something like the Ventus, like an active mid layer like that. It really comes down to the air temperature in addition to the wind flow, or wind speed is the right term for that.
Yeah.
So when you're hiking, you're moving, you're exerting yourself at all, what I've found is that in any given scenario, whether or not I want to add insulation will depend on my level of exertion. And so, for example, in October, I shared this story at the beginning of the live stream. We were hiking in a number of miles, and it was October. The temperatures were fairly brisk, but not too cold before the sun went down. I didn't want any insulation on at all because of the weight of the pack I was carrying and the pace that we were moving. We were kind of clicking along at a decent pace. And so the Nebo was the perfect layer for that scenario. Had I been just standing there, it was probably 45, 50 degrees. I would not have been comfortable in just an altitude sun hoodie base layer. But because they had the movement combined with blocking enough wind to keep me warm, I was really at a perfect temperature while hiking. So there's not really a good way to rate, how much wind it can block. It's going to really depend on the scenario we're in, but it's such a versatile piece that you can use it in a ton of different ways. If you're still feeling cold after throwing the Nebo on, that's when you throw on your mid layer as well underneath.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Lots of good questions. We have one here. What makes this nylon better than other nylons? That really speaks to the proprietary coating that we have on this 20 denier nylon that comes from Toray. Also, just the way that they weave it means that they get a very fine weave in this fabric, and it's a very difficult fabric for them to produce, and so it's just the best that we've found and tested of all the windbreakers and fabrics that are available to us, and so it's a little hard to say exactly why it's better, because a lot of that coating is a proprietary trade secret, but it is not your run-of-the-mill 20D nylon.
Yeah, I wish there's more we could say on that. There is only so much we can say about that proprietary coating that's been blended in with the fabric. But basically, if we go back to the story we shared about Toray, our partners, where we get the fabrics, that will help kind of explain it. Even Toray, owning multiple fabric mills in multiple different locations, cannot replicate what this fabric can do. Except for one of their mills in Japan. It's that hard to create this blend, and so it is definitely a unique fabric. It is not something that you could just find anywhere. It's not a normal 20 denier nylon. It was built specifically, it works perfectly for this application, putting in the windbreaker like we have.
Yeah. So Daniel Hansen has an interesting question. Similar to other questions, how is the water resistance relative to the Ventus and Vario? Will moisture sneak through the single layered Nebo, or is it about the same? The fact that the Vario and the Ventus are essentially 3 layers. You've got your outer layer, your fabric, and your inner layer. You will feel moisture sneak through this a little quicker, but in the same token, the other side of that coin is it will dry much faster as well. So it will be a very fast drying piece. And so if you do get a little bit of moisture in it, if you keep it on, you keep moving, your body will dry it out quickly. We just tell a lot of new people that come on the trail with us all the time, your gear will dry out faster if you keep it on than if you take it off and hang it off your backpack or something. And so the Nebo will dry very fast compared to the Ventus and the Vario.
Absolutely. All right. A couple other questions here. So Hockey Dad 6631 asking, is it breathable enough to work hard and break a good sweat like mountain biking or hiking? Yes, it's built specifically to work hard. I'm not sure if you meant if you want to work hard and not break a sweat, or if you're trying to break a sweat. You can always break a sweat. You can always work really hard to outweigh the breathability of this, but you're going to break a sweat no matter what, whether you're wearing nothing or the Nebo or whatever. But mountain biking or hiking or even running, like I mentioned before, is a perfect way to use the windbreaker. Absolutely, if that answers your question. Yeah,
it's breathable enough that when you do break a sweat, it's not going to put you into a dangerous position the way that a rain jacket would, because with a rain jacket, you're going to break a sweat and then you're going to have nowhere for those vapors and that moisture to go, and that's going to stay on your body, and eventually it's going to make you cold. With the Nebo, sure, you'll sweat in it as you're working hard and climbing up a hill or mountain biking, but the fact that it's much more breathable means that your body will be able to regulate, and as you slow down, you will be able to dry out faster and experience that temperature regulation that we designed this jacket for.
Absolutely. I've experienced that firsthand quite a bit of times, where I've, gotten pretty sweaty, especially on my back where my backpack was. And when I took the pack off and just set up camp, by the time I was done setting up camp, everything felt dry. My back, everything, my base layers, they kind of just dried out because the Nebo was breathable enough to allow that.
Especially if you're using a base layer like the Altitude. If you're using the Turn as a base layer, you're going to hold on to more moisture, and it's going to take longer to dry out. Wool, it holds on to moisture and it keeps you warm while wet, but it doesn't dry nearly as fast as the polyester would of the Altitude. So if you're worried about doing an activity where you're going to sweat a lot, I would choose a base layer that's as fast drying as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some questions about sizing, a few people. And so some people are asking if you need to size up with the Nebo Windbreaker or if it's true to size. The answer is it's true to size. It'll fit, like I said before, very similar to the way a Vario jacket fits if you already have one of those. I would really recommend using the wear sizing help on all of our product listings on our website. It'll be able to help you choose the right size also, depending on what fit you prefer. If you like things to fit a little bit more loose, wear will help you account for that and suggest a size. That being said, we have specifically designed the Nebo to not have a lot of excess fabric. We don't want it to turn into a sail in the wind. We don't want it to catch a ton of wind when you're wearing it. So it should fit fairly trim, but you should also be able to fit other layers, like I said, a base layer, a mid layer, and a couple things like that underneath the Nebo.
Yeah, and if you end up getting it too big, it's not going to do as good of a job of holding your heat in, because it's like taking your current house, expanding your house, but not upping the size of your furnace. It's going to be more house to heat with the same amount of furnace BTUs. That's the issue with going oversized with your clothing or your sleeping bags. We see that a ton with people who just say, I just can't stand being tight in a mummy bag or a top quilt. I always buy a long wide. And we're like, well, you can definitely do that. Just know it's going to take longer to keep that, to build up that warmth and keep it. So, and then along those same lines, I saw TJ Belt's question of, what if I put on all my layers, all my OV gear, and get this new XXL and cover it all? I'll be so comfy. I would say you could cover all of your layers, and it's designed to cover all of your layers except for your Nova Pro and your Nova UL, possibly. The Nova Pro and Nova UL have the zero stitch fabric, which makes them more wind resistant than the Nebo by themselves. And so there's not really any real need to put this over that. Its fit is meant to be trim enough that you don't lose heat when you're wearing it as mid layer. And so that would mean if you're wearing it over, if it was going to fit over your puffy, it would be a little too big to work as a mid layer. So that said, the tusher is oversized so that you can run it over a puffy. And if you were in a circumstance where you really needed to put all your layers on, then the tusher would fit over the outside. That sounds like a really cold day.
Yeah, it'd have to be miserable. Yeah. But with the Nova Pro and the Nova UL, the zero stitch fabric is amazing, but there is still just a few seams right where you have to have a seam to create a jacket. So where the sleeves plug into the torso, there's a little seam there. And so if you're in a really cold situation and you just have the Nebo with you as well, like along with your Nova Pro or your Nova UL, you can fit the Nebo underneath for an added layer of protection from airflow. And that will help offset those seams that are in the Nova UL or the Nova Pro. But for the most part, the Nova Pro or Nova UL by themselves will block wind really well. You just won't want to hike too much in them because of the insulation that they've got. You'll overheat really quick.
Right, exactly. So, lots of good comments in here. We really appreciate everyone taking part in this product launch live Q&A. It's fun to see where everyone's from. It's cool to see. I just saw, who was it? Paul Ferraro taking all of our stuff on the Camino this September. That'll be quite an interesting experience. September seems like you'd get a variety of weather, so we'd love to hear how that goes.
Good luck on the trail. Definitely, we'd love to hear how it goes, so reach out and tell us your story when you're back.
Yeah.
Be on the podcast again?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, there is another question here by Joe. What's been your experience with snag resistance? So it's a 20 denier fabric. It is a 20 denier nylon. It's ultralight and not built like a Carhartt or other really durable materials. So, don't go charging through thorn bushes, but it is going to be more durable than, the turn or the altitude. Those will snag easier than this. Like we mentioned before, the fabric is very similar to the Ventus or the Vario. And so if you've had experience with either of those, it's about as snag proof as those jackets that have been out for a little longer.
Yeah, it's and one thing I like about what Brigham and Tayson have done when speccing all of our products out is you'll see other ultralight brands who venture down into the 10 denier and 7 denier fabric weights for jackets, and then they have multiple layers of that to get their achieved rain jacket plan or their wind jacket. And we have opted to go with a heavier face fabric than a lot of them, but then not use as many layers. And that gets you a more durable product in that sense. So within the market and the close competitors to this, I think it will be about the durability that you would expect for a wind jacket that weighs only 4 ounces.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time. We maybe have time for 1 or 2 more questions before we share the big secret as promised. Michael says, I see that you are wearing one currently. Is that a long sleeve base or like an altitude? Are there any issues with overheating on your forearms? That's for you, Tyler.
So I am wearing one. All I have under it right now is a t-shirt. It started out decently chilly in this conference room. We didn't have the heaters on, so there's always a little bit of an edge when we come into here. But I, let's see, what's the question? Currently, is that a long sleeve base?
And are you overheating on your forearms?
I'm not wearing a long sleeve base layer, so I'm not overheating. I'm pretty comfy right here. Derek has a sweater on. Are you hot in here yet?
Nope, I'm pretty comfy.
Okay, yeah. So we're both pretty comfortable in this room that's probably 60 degrees.
Give or take.
Yeah.
A couple degrees, but it's about there.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I think that's probably about all the questions that we're going to have time for. Hopefully we were able to answer and move through most of them. We appreciate you guys getting on here and asking your questions and interacting with us. We really love to hear from you guys and interact with all of you. As promised, we do have a couple of things to share. So not only is there one secret, but there's actually 2 things that maybe we haven't told you, that we've kind of sneaked past you a little bit. So as of Monday, not only did we launch the Nebo Windbreaker, but we also made something else available and kind of sneakily put it on the website. Many of you already have tried out or will soon be receiving our Altitude Sun Hoodie. It's been a really great product. A ton of people have raved about it. Well, we have just released women's sizing on the Altitude hoodie. So you can go ahead and find that women's specific fit on the Altitude, and that is available immediately as of 3 days ago. And so that's something really excited. We're really, really pumped about. But the second thing is also product related. We also have released new variations to the Delano Ultralight tarp. So this is a tarp that's really easy to just pack up with you and take anywhere. Tyler actually brings it anytime we're going on a group hike with multiple people. It comes in handy to, make a covering if it's raining, if we want to hang out and not everybody just dive into their tents immediately after getting to camp. Or it works well as a standalone shelter. You can pitch it over your hammock, or you can set it up with trekking poles or using tree branches over a ground sleep system. Really a good tarp. We've added 2 new colors, which are both the Arctic and the blue, same as what we have in the 40th tent. And another update on the Delano tarp is we've added an additional guy out attachment point in the center of the sides of the tarp. What that does is that makes it more secure in any kind of wind or weather, so that you don't have to worry so much about the sides flapping a little bit. The fabric itself is cut really well. We've used what's called a catenary cut, and that makes it so that when you've pitched it and have got all your cords and your lines pulled tight, it stretches the fabric tight as well. So there shouldn't really be any or very minimal flapping in the wind once your tarp is pitched. In addition to that catenary cut, those extra guy out line attachment points will help you secure that tarp against directional wind. Say it's blowing from the side, or you're really worried about it floating away in strong gusts, you can add a guy out line to those points and secure it further. So both of those things, the women's Altitude Sun Hoodie and the new updates and colors available for the Delano tarp are now available. You can get them right now during our site-wide spring sale. That sale's not gonna last very much longer. Everything on the website is on sale, including our new releases like the Nebo, this new women's fit of the Altitude, and the new Delano tarp variation. So we definitely encourage you guys to go and take advantage of that. We can't keep the sale open for very much longer, but we did want to throw you a bone and do everything we could to help you guys gear up for the spring and summer backpacking season. So now is the best time to do it, taking advantage of the site-wide deals.
Yep. One other thing I want to mention is we'll be closing the late registration for the OV100 soon. And if you're already joining the OV100, we're super excited to have you. But if you don't have a partner to do your 100-mile challenge with, now is the time to go and find your buddies and say, hey, I'm going to do this awesome challenge. I'm learning a ton. It's meant to help everyone to learn how to do their bucket list hike, and I want to have you come with me. If you can convince someone to come do the trip with you, they can sign up for the late registration before the end of the month, and they can still be a part of it, and that will be more fun and more safe for you on the challenge. So that's another thing that we want to make you aware of.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us today, guys. Hopefully we answered your questions, and appreciate you guys and what you do for us as well. We do appreciate your feedback. We do appreciate your support. And with that, we'll see you guys on the trail.